The semantic scale study is a study that you can order that basically will give you information about consumers' preferences and also perceptions of the existing brands in the marketplace. So basically, the research team goes out and they ask a bunch of questions of a bunch of potential consumers. I believe it's 600 consumers. Basically says, how would you rate each attribute for each brand on a scale of 1 to 7, with 1 being very low and 7 being very high. So they ask a bunch of people those questions, and then they ask people in each of the specific segments, well, what is your ideal value on a scale of 1 to 7 for each of the particular features? Okay, so it gives you a good idea of how brands are perceived and also what consumers are looking for. And so the challenge is for you to get your perceptions to match up with the consumers or the target segment's ideal values. So if you know that you're targeting professionals and say your most and professionals are looking for semantic value on features of 5.6, and you see that you're currently perceived at only 2.1, that's a problem. So you'll need to do something to try to figure out how to move these perceptions closer to 5.6 and thus make it more appealing for that particular segment. Down below, you will see all of this information in graphical form. Okay, this is just XY graphs that just plot two of the variables. So it we tend to learn more or retain more graphically. So that's all this is. So here you have in this particular chart, for example, you have every single brand mapped out on the semantic scale of 1 to 7 for both price and number of features. You also have the ideal values graphically represented for all 5 target segments. So you need to figure out, okay, if you are, what did we say? If you are most is right here, and you're trying to target professionals, you can see that number of features is way off. They're looking for whatever this is, 5.6, you're 2.1. So you need to figure out how to change perceptions to move the perception of most up here. Also, you can see that professionals are expecting a price of about 5 on the semantic value scale, and currently it's at a 2.4. So what can you do to increase perceptions of price? One thing you can do is raise the price, obviously, but what else can you do there? And so you have a number of charts for that. Just gives it to you graphically. If you are more numerical based, don't even worry about looking at those charts. Just stick with the numbers. A lot of teams like to download all this information into Excel and work through it that way. This little figure here kind of talks about how important each of the characteristics are. Price is going to always be the most important, though that importance it varies depending on which segment you're talking about. Typically, processing power is the second most important, and we go down from there. And down at the bottom, and not to really complicate this more, but we also have the notion that consumers' preferences change over time. So their ideal value is kind of a moving target. They don't move radically or dramatically, but if as you go through this over course of a couple periods, you can see the trajectory of consumers' preference changes, and you can try to kind of anticipate where they're going to be a couple periods down the road and maybe change perceptions to meet what they'll be looking for at that point than where they are particularly right now. So that's a semantic scale study. Very important to order this one. If you don't order this one, you don't really have any idea of what consumers are looking for. And from a marketing standpoint, that's a nightmare.